without further ado, so introducing the president of Historic Port Royal, Kerri Holland, and the secretary of Historic Port Royal, Trish Parker, longtime members and caretakers and protectors of the history of Historic Port Royal. They have a very admirable thing that they do there with the way that they handle their organization, with the relationship that they have with the Caroline County Board of Supervisors and the support that they get from them. I served on their board for the last couple of years. And even though Kerri would tell you, we wish we had people that, we want to have a robust website, we want to have this, we want to have that, and whatever, I assured her that their organization and the management of it and the museum is admirable. I mean, truly. So I can't stress enough to please go down and check out their museum. And not only that, so they don't have a lot of hours in the museum, the same that we do. They don't have people to man it, the same that we do. But people will call and ask for tours, and those tours they're not just for the museum. They include the old Port Royal School, if they want to see that. They include other areas in the historic district. So they're so accommodating to share the history. It's really cool. So if you're interested in that, get in touch with them. Become a member. They put out a great newsletter also and they have a lot of events, a lot of living history events, several during the year, in May and July for sure. So, well, maybe not May this time. 4th of July.
We have a wonderful July 4 event. We have it every year, actually in 2026, which will also be the 250th anniversary of our nation. It'll be our 25th July 4 celebration. It's the only one in Caroline, and it's a big deal. So welcome.
If I may interrupt for your presentation already, can you give us about 2 minutes about your organization? You have multiple facilities, I understand.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never been over there.
Okay. So we have a couple facilities. We have the Museum of American History on Route 301 or Main Street, and that is open on. You're making me nervous.
No, you're fine.
And that is open on Saturdays, 10 to 2, and we're limited because of volunteer. Everyone understands it's hard to find volunteers, and I work full time, so I can't do it. And across the street within the historic district, we have the Port Royal Museum of Medicine, which was a doctor's office since the 1842, I believe. It was a doctor's office, and it was moved from its original location because the property owner, it was threatened by the property by being demoed by the property owner. So we, Caroline County Board of Supervisors and Virginia Department of Historic Resources and Port Royal all came together. It moved over onto the town green, and that is our medical museum. We also have finished stabilizing and nearly finished restoring a 1750 something. It's a really, really early kind of a middle class-ish house that's right across from the town green, also within the historic district. That was donated to us by the property owner, who actually died about a year and a half later, but with the promise that we would restore it, and we have. It's eventually will be open as a museum. We'll have a lot of museums over in the historic district.
And that's kind of rare because usually it's the big fancy historic homes that are the ones that are restored. So we're going to try to hold to the original use of it and try to show what it was like to be a middle-class tradesman or shopkeeper or something like that when we get it ready.
It was actually a former home of servants who served the big manor house across the street, the Brockenborough house. And that was the house that John Wilkes Booth was turned away from. So we're excited about interpreting the underrepresented historic society. And then we also have
I'll do the schoolhouse, you do the
You do this.
Masonic thing.
All right.
And so we also have, under the umbrella of HPR, is a one-room African-American schoolhouse that we just had our 100th year anniversary. It was opened in 1924, and we had a lot of people that went there whose families were from Port Royal that came back. It was a wonderful event, and we opened that upon request. I will always, or Kerri will open it on Saturday if somebody wants to come to see it, but we don't have anybody stationed over there to just leave it open so that people can come and go. But it's been restored to period, and it's gorgeous. It's thought to be Rosenwald plans, if you know what a Rosenwald school is.
We might need to go ahead and use the microphone. Because
Yes.
our
Okay.
people on Zoom can't hear. They definitely
Okay.
can't. Should we use? Can one of them hold the mic and the other one have the thing, or do they not work at the same time? Okay. Yeah, probably just the hand
Sorry.
mic then. With the hand mic. Yeah. So the only thing with the hand mic is it's got to be right up to your
Okay.
lips. Yeah.
Because I really want to hear what you're saying. It's
Yeah, and they do
interesting.
too. This is exciting.
It's
Yeah,
interesting.
I hate to have you yelling the whole time, but yeah.
You gotta be like right here when you talk.
Got it?
Got it.
All right.
Whether I can do it or not.
I don't know.
Okay.
There you
great.
go.
Fantastic.
I used to be a middle school teacher, so I should be able to yell.
You're good.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, we're good. All right, so the schoolhouse is a really a
Up to your
fascinating.
mouth.
Closer to your mouth.
Yep. The schoolhouse is really a fascinating building, and you know it didn't get electricity to the 1950s, and those great big windows show when you walk in, and we use those who don't turn the electricity on, so you can see what it's like to try to teach school in there, all grade levels, only black kids. It's quite a piece. We're very proud of that. Yeah.
When did it close?
1957. So, and then it became just a basically a holder of junk for Caroline County until it was, well, that's a long story. You need to come in if you want to hear the story. I'll tell you the whole thing. Okay, Masonic Lodge.
Well, first I'll talk really quickly about our portrait gallery, which is along the walls of Town Hall. The Town Hall also shares space with the Port Royal Library, and it originally was that building, also in the historic district, was originally the white school, where across the street was the black school. So, and then we have the Lyceum, or the old Port Royal Town Hall. Mason's Lodge, Lyceum, community event, classroom. It was built in 1852 by the town, for the town, and it served as a municipal building, just a civil building, until about looking at you, about till the turn of the century. The Masons moved to Bowling Green, and so the Masons' history in Port Royal is very, very important. Kilwinning Cross Masonic Lodge was the second chartered Masonic Lodge in Virginia, beat by a smaller lodge down in Portsmouth by 2 days. So in any case, it was the very first meeting place 100 years later provided for the Kilwinning Cross Lodge. Of course, 50 years later, they moved their lodge down into Bowling Green. We are in the works of. It was stabilized back in about 2000, and then all work kind of halted. We lost funding. We lost the backing of Herb Bateman when he died in 2000. He was in office working on a grant to basically finish the restoration of the lodge. And then we got a hold of the doctor's office and the Murray House, and just from there, we lost track. It was terrible. It was deferred maintenance, but right now we are working very, very hard to get a grant going. We're revisiting everything about the stabilization process, about the masonry work that needs to be done, and we'll save that for another meeting because that is a work in progress. I think that's it. We have a lot going on.
Thank you for bringing it up. We've covered it for
It is a lot.
I didn't realize it. I was talking to Renee a moment ago. It was interesting to me about the medical museum. Is Dr. Harris was my doctor in the 50s. So,
Well, he was the third practicing doctor in that building.
small building.
It is a small building.
Rob has some stories about the doctor.
Well, we'd love to have you come over and write him down. We have a journal for his old patients.
That's cool.
And you could actually help
I wanted
us.
to read it. It'd be cool to read it. Yeah.
You could actually help us tell us where everything was in the building.
I don't remember but so much, but I remember a few doctors that would do house calls in those days.
And he went.
Across the river on a ferry, ride a horse and buggy over to the house over on Kings Highway.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I suppose I feel like I could talk forever about Port Royal, though. So we'll get started on our Whitehouse collection. Why does Port Royal, this little town, have Whitehouse china? That's because our major benefactor, Herb Collins, was a curator for the Smithsonian, and he's responsible for the majority of the political collection that the Smithsonian now holds. Through his curiosity, through the advantage of being a curator, and just his love for political history, he started his own collection of the Whitehouse china, and eventually he gave us the collection along with many other objects, and that's the result. The result of his donation is the American History Museum.
Even after he retired, and I'm going to try to do without that. You keep that, okay? I'm going to try to yell. Oh, God, I'm not sure. How about that? Is that okay? No? Well, I can't have the
Let's
light in my face.
Yeah, come further to the middle. You can do that if you want to come further to the middle. There you go.
Keep Parker right there.
It's all right. Even after he retired, he still kept his hand in and was always looking for pieces that were coming up for auction on the china. And the last piece that he bought before he died was a piece that Kerri's going to show you in a minute, as an $8,000 plate that he bought that the Society of Cincinnati gave a 12-piece plate setting to George Washington when he retired from the presidency. So it was used in Mount Vernon. And just a quick story, when it came in, Kerri wouldn't let us touch it. She had to wear gloves, and she told us we could go like this. And that's about all we could do. So it was just kind of funny that was one of Herb's, he was most proud of that piece, I think. There were a lot of pieces he was proud of, but he loved that piece.
When you see that piece, you'll understand why I said, it's like, no one touched this. So that is why we have the collection, but why is Whitehouse china so important? It is more than just pretty china, it's more than something you eat off of. China, as any sort of material thing that you have in your house, is a description of who you are, what time period you're living in. It's a description of your culture, your time period, your values, your beliefs. So we're looking at this from kind of an anthropological point of view, but also what the china represents, who it's representing, and so we will talk about the symbolism. We'll talk about the subtle details that were selected for the patterns by the first ladies and by the presidents, what they mean, what they represent. We'll also talk about what things are missing and why are they missing, and isn't that curious that he's so concerned about this and not that? So we do it. You'll get a lot. If you want to pay attention, if we have some time, maybe we'll do a little quiz at the end.
We also, while you're getting ready for the next slide, we also have 20 representations of china or glassware or whatever from 25 different presidents, 123 different pieces. So we have several big cabinets. One whole room is our china room in the museum, and it's the biggest collection of china on display in the country, except for the White House and the Smithsonian.
Though they have bigger collections than we do. But other private owners probably have bigger collections, but they're not on display.
One of the first things we're going to talk about and continue all the way through is the evolution of the presidential seals, or our country seals, starting from here, which is what, 1792, Kerri, when this was adopted, and this is what it looks like today. And if you just look, you can see some interesting similarities. A couple of things we're going to point out to you that as changes go back and forth across the presidents, what they decide to do on their china, the way the seal develops. But some overarching things are arrows and olive branches, e pluribus unum, meaning from many one, the stars, the cloud, and the eagle's head. So there are lots of things we'll point out to you as we go through here. All right, Kerri.
Next slide. Well, that kind of goes along with what I was just talking about. This is representative of who we are as a nation. The state dinners is what these were formerly used for. Were times where the presidents and administrations would come together, invite national, international ambassadors and statesmen and congressmen.
And their wives.
And it was a time to not only impress them, but think about it as breaking bread with your allies, and what did we just say?
Keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer.
Keep your friends close,
Right.
Keep your enemies closer. So it was not only dinner, but it was also a time of negotiation. And you'll see how
and just a couple of things. We don't have the Obama china there. That's not. We don't have any Obama china because that's not up for sale to any private museums yet. We have some Truman stuff and some Reagan stuff. That was one of Herb's favorite presidents, and some Eisenhower things. So most of what you see here, we have examples of in the museum. Yes, sir.
So each administration, would they come up with a new set of china that they...
If they wanted to. Kerri was saying this just again to refresh my memory, that you get a budget. Back in the day before the Whitehouse Historical Society actually bought the china for the presidents, Congress had to give you money to do whatever you wanted to do in the White House. So if you needed some new furniture, if you needed some new china, and remember all this was hand washed and things got broken and pieces got dropped, and so things disappeared. So usually if you want a state dinner, you're going to have to order your own china. And each administration's china was packed up and stored away, and then you could get it back out if you wanted to, or you could, but you had to pick your own, and it took a while to pick it, and then you had to order it, and then you had to wait for it to come. Some of the actual presidents never even got to see their own china. If you were a one-term president, sometimes it would come and you'd already be out of office.
Wow.
And on that note, some administrations didn't order china. They preferred to use their money for furniture or whatnot. And then, of course, our very first president had a very meager budget. Obviously, no White House. The Congress provided money for a place, a very nice home in New York. He obviously would have brought his own china. That's George Washington, of course, would have brought his own china, used what we have here is Canton export, Chinese export porcelain. This was available on market, but it's porcelain, it's Chinese porcelain, so it was exported in. This is what the bougie would have used, the aristocrats would have used. If you go down in class, middle class would use more like the creamware or the queen's pattern, an earthenware. And when you go down even further on the social ladder, they would have used beat up pewter, wood. So we know that George Washington had some money. He had a reputation to uphold, so he used high-style china. Later on, Martha Washington was gifted this tea pattern and it was used during their administration. And then over here is the Society of Cincinnati plate, which I didn't let anybody touch. And it is.
And this is how you know Society of Cincinnati, because it's this seal right here. And that was a group of Revolutionary War officers, like a little club.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make it easier. So this right here, you can tell when you come to the museum to see it, it's old. It's been there. It's been around a while. Now, whether Washington really ate off of it, we don't know. But somebody that lived there did. So we love this piece.
Absolutely. Then we have John Adams, and John Adams and Thomas Jefferson get one slide. They weren't in the White House. They didn't have a White House. However, that doesn't diminish their presidency. John Adams likely brought his own, and as did Thomas Jefferson. But and you can see Thomas Jefferson's has his J. It was Chinese export porcelain, high quality. And John Adams also had Chinese export. He also had French porcelain.
There's a story about his wife making sure she packed up every piece and took it home with her too. I'm sure that it probably didn't get there all in one piece, because you got to pack it up, put it on a wagon or a carriage or something, and get it all the way back to New England.
And the reason why we don't know a lot about what the former administrations used before the White House, obviously, is because the White House burned during the Madison administration. This is what the Madisons used while they were in the White House. When they moved in, it was, well, when Adams moved in, it was a mess. It was still being built. When James Madison and Dolly moved in, it was still a bit messy. They didn't have a lot of furniture. The furniture was pretty beat up. There was a lot of complaints about how beat up the furniture was, wanting to buy new furniture. But this pattern was imported from France, high style. Again, Dolly Madison would have nothing less. And that's the example there.
There's an interesting story about this too, and I've seen it written down several times, that when in 1814, when the British were coming, they were, Dolly and the rest of the family and whoever was there that was important was sitting down to dinner at the dinner table, and they got word that the British were coming. So, they rushed around and tried to grab some things. Supposedly, Dolly, cut out Washington's portrait out of the frame. She grabbed a few important papers, probably the Declaration of Independence, maybe the Constitution. They all hopped in a wagon or several wagons and took off as fast as they could and left dinner sitting on the table. Well, the British officers walked in, looked around, ransacked the place, saw dinner was ready, sat down, ate the dinner, and then burned the place to the ground. So, she was lucky that she got away with the family intact and whoever else important. I'm sure as many servants as they could get on there. And then, when the White House burned, anything that was in it burned. So whatever Jefferson might have left, or Adams might have left, or Washington might have left, gone.
Good story. Well, you're going to talk about this one.
All right. So James Monroe got a White House. It was built kind of sparsely furnished. He had to fight for every bit of money he could to try to get some furniture in there and some china in there. But one of the things that you start to see here is that now there's some personal touches on the china. So James Monroe, you can see the things that were important to him and he thought should be important to the country. This is something that you now will begin to see on the china. You start to see the president putting their personality there. You also see something here that you haven't seen before, and that's the beginning of the eagle. That's the first place that you see the eagle. But notice it's not a bald eagle. Okay, the eagle, I think it was 1792 or something when the eagle was adopted as our country's bird, not the turkey, which is what they thought they wanted. But there you got olive branches here, And the arrows, what do you think that stood for? Olive branches for what? Peace. And arrows for? For war. Right. So again, we were a peaceful country, but we could defend ourselves if we need to. A lot of things right here. It says E pluribus unum. You can't read it. And here's some stars here. They're 13. To me, this is a pretty powerful plate, and it's up here, right there. Yep. What's missing to me, as an educator myself, is you don't see anything about education.
No, it's with commerce.
It's not though. That's business. That's finance.
Yeah, commerce is business.
There's no humanities and there's no education.
Yeah, and so what that tells me is the wealthy people really didn't believe in public education for the masses. They were more, if you could afford to get your children educated, then good for you. And the rest of them, okay, well, you probably didn't need to be educated to be able to run a store or whatever. So that is a very interesting first, I guess, personalized China from Monroe.
I love that story.
So what bird is being used?
It's an eagle, just not a bald eagle.
Right now it's the golden eagle.
Yeah.
It doesn't become the bald eagle until Lincoln.
Don't give it away.
Oh, sorry. So Andrew Jackson, he ordered this. This was actually the only American-made china of the around of the 19th century. It was made in Philadelphia, I believe, and it was just ordered off of. It was market ready, and they slapped the eagle on there.
But notice something here. All right, so this.
Okay.
So you see anything different in the eagles? Yeah, the head. Right. So the eagle's head is important. You'll see as we go along, if the eagle's head is facing the olive branches, that symbolizes peace. If the eagle's head is facing the arrows, that symbolizes war. But they're both facing the olive branches. What's happened? The eagle's head's flipped. You see that? Now, we don't know why that decision was made. That's not where I've looked and looked and looked to find out why. Maybe the manufacturer just did it by mistake. Who knows? But it's just kind of interesting. It's the same eagle. It just, the head is different. And even though it's still, I mean, like they, you know, how you put something down on the wrong side. Anyway, who knows? But just interesting.
Maybe manufacturer error.
Yeah,
maybe wanted to stand
error.
out. Maybe wanted to stand out from James Monroe using the eagle. There's a lot of, you could pontificate.
Yes.
But moving on to, by the way, these are all pieces that we have in the museum. Most of them are originals. Several are reproductions. Several were issued by the Whitehouse to be made. Some were issued by later presidents to add to a former collection. These are originals. These are pulp. Here we have the first introduction of something that we'll see later on, but the introduction of something very pretty and feminine for the dessert plates. The dessert plates for pulp have later on what would be state flowers. And we have the absence of the eagle, but instead we have the federal shield with the E pluribus unum. So this would have been the dessert plates. This would have been more traditional dinner plate that was used.
But notice no eagle.
Right.
Yeah.
Zachary Taylor.
Ugly.
Sam overheard us. We're like, we're going to take this slide out because we don't like Sam. We don't. Zachary Taylor, great president. Just we don't know much about the China.
He was an Indian hunter. He was not married.
He was unmarried.
His daughter who took over the
had 1 year in the presidency. His daughter took over all the entertainment. He was, he was called Old Rough and Ready. He was not an entertainer. So, from my perspective, from what I see in this pattern, there's a lot of German, Dutch influence, and it had to have been the selection of his daughter, and I'm not sure quite what it represents. If he was Dutch German background, But again, we have, and it's really weird because we have an eagle that's completely different than
But still
any
wings
other
outstretched.
eagle.
And you still got olive branches, you still got arrows, you still have Corbusunum, so there are some similarities.
We only have 3 arrows.
Yeah.
We don't really have any sort of representative number of laurel leaves, and it's just
Olive
it's
leaves.
kind of an anomaly. Olive leaves, thank you.
We'll get to Laurel.
Franklin Pierce. Franklin Pierce is a unique pattern. So Franklin Pierce went to an expose of industrial arts, and to attract him to this exhibit, somebody, Limoges, provided a pattern with the shield, but with the P in it. And Franklin Pierce saw that, and he very much appreciated it. He ordered the pattern, but he had the P removed. The missing P is what made a problem in identifying this as Pierce's china back when
Jackie Kennedy
was
right,
trying
and
to
Mrs.
organize
Eisenhower were
everything.
trying to figure out all these boxes of china and who did they belong to, and they were in storage somewhere, and they're looking through it, and this knot wasn't a label that said this is Franklin Pierce.
Right.
So
at first
without
they
the P,
At first they thought it was Madison's.
Yeah.
But turns out, no, it was. They found some background research and discovered that this was in fact Pierce's.
there's a lot of the sad story that
Did
goes
he
with that.
not want the
Because of
P, or
museum.
was it accidentally left out?
I don't think he thought. There's a long sad story from Pierce. Come to the museum and I'll tell you about it. He was not a very happy president.
So he lost his son shortly after inauguration,
All of his
and the
children died.
entire White House was in mourning. Pretty much the entire presidency. It was a very sad
A
story.
lot of alcohol involved, both the president and the president's wife. It was
So-
just not.
Come up on the picture. Abraham Lincoln is the first time we'll see the bald eagle, the white head. The head is facing the olive branches. We've got 13 leaves, 13 olives, 13 arrows, e pluribus unum, the same cloud and ray. We have a subtle little Mary Todd Lincoln-ism in here, and that is her signature color is this mauve purple. Interestingly, though, she also ordered 3 other sets with different colors. She felt that she needed to show off the White House. She wanted people that came to the White House to meet her husband and have dinner with the husband to be impressed. And they were.
If you know much about her, you know she did not hesitate to spend money.
I'm going to give you Grant.
All right, so this is Grant, and when I first came to the museum and started becoming interested in this, it always stunned me that Grant, who I don't think of a flower person, that would actually want flowers on his china. But again, that was in fashion. I'm sure his wife had something to do with
Maybe
that.
Julia had
But
something to do with
one of the things that's different here is there's the seal, okay, and a lot of similarities. There's E pluribus unum, but what you can't really see here is you've got olive branches and laurel branches instead of arrows. And he did not want arrows, but laurel, because laurel stands for strength and honor. So that tells you something about his mindset after the war. So they're beautiful, and you wouldn't think that to me, an old Civil War general who probably was an alcoholic would want something like this on his china, but he did.
But he loved entertaining. His wife loved entertaining, and he was the first to actually have a ruler come to a state dinner, and that was the ruler of what was then Hawaii. And they wanted to discuss tariffs concerning sugar, but sadly for Hawaii and the Kingdom of Hawaii, I think 10 years later we absorbed it. So I'm not sure how that bureaucratic dinner went. I'm going to give you Hayes.
All right.
You love
So
Hayes.
one of my favorite, we have a whole big cabinet dedicated to Rutherford B. Hayes and what they call Lemonade Lucy.
And Lemonade Lucy was his wife, Lucy Hayes, but actually he was the one who didn't allow alcohol in the White House, but somehow she got that nickname, Lemonade Lucy, and it was thought that it was her that didn't allow alcohol. But they really wanted, we call this an Americana tour. They wanted their China to be different than anybody else's. They sent a painter out to around the United States. He painted scenes from all around the country, brought them back. They decided which ones to use. So there's several that are kind of interesting here. This is crab. Here, the Chesapeake Bay crab, and then you've got crab claws on the back, which Kerri and I didn't even know were there. We were taking the pieces out to photograph and said, whoa, what's this on the back? Again, and this is one of my favorites, a New England kitchen. I take that as honoring women, honoring women's work. It took a lot of work to put together a meal in those days. You didn't go to the freezer and pull out Stouffer's lasagna. I mean, it was an all-day job. Common everyday scenes that you might see on the plains. There's a buffalo, wolves. This is a gorgeous plate. It's set in so that the actual half shell sits right in the little indentations here. This is where the Davies, wasn't that his name? Did all his painting. This was down, I think it was in North Carolina somewhere. A nut plate, one of Kerri's favorites. She likes squirrels. And a story that's kind of funny about the nut plates is that Mrs. Johnson, Lady Bird Johnson, did not like this china at all. And she made she said no one wants to eat their dinner and then underneath see a bug eating a piece of fruit. But she also used these nut plates as ashtrays in the White House during their administration.
So the nut tray, why are they not round?
Well, it's supposedly, I guess, maybe an acorn shape. That's what I always think, that maybe that's what that is. I don't really know.
So is that front back? Is what we're seeing there?
This is what you saw right here, right. So there's some acorns there. Maybe that's where the shape came from.
When you flip them over, that's where the seal is.
Yeah, and the seal is on the back, right. Yeah, it wouldn't look good on the front. That's what they decided. One of the things about Lucy Hayes was she was a botanist, and she studied botany. She loved plants, but she also had the White House electrified. This is the first time electricity was put in during their administration, but she was so afraid of electricity that she never touched it. She had servants turn on and off the lights because she was afraid she was going to get electrocuted. At least that's what the story says.
But when people sat down to their state dinners, she wanted to have them have a tour of America. And it was called the Tour of America, featuring all the flora, fauna, and different scenes of America. And we have, as Trish said, we have a cabinet full of this. It was Herb's favorite, and it is the most unique pattern I think ever graced the White House. Where am I pointing this to?
Over here, Kerri. Behind you. Did you turn the switch off again?
I might have. Yeah, well, we like this one.
There you go.
Okay, Benjamin Harrison. All right, Benjamin Harrison is one of my favorites. Here we have the symbolism. We have the Monroe eagle. It's a bald eagle. Symbolism is the same, but here's the special touches that we see. I think there's obviously not 52 stars yet, but we have representative here. We have goldenrod and corn to represent Harrison's Midwest roots, and also basically America's bread basket. That's where they came. That's where they lived, and that's how she wanted them to be represented.
He's got it.
Oh, okay. Next. Okay, and then we have Theodore Roosevelt. Thank you.
Doing this.
Theodore Roosevelt's China was market ready with the addition of the presidential seal. I do want to say this is still being made in France. Yes.
Were all these the eagles and things hand painted until a certain point in time?
So the process, there's a process of making what we would call it is a decal. So it's painted on tissue paper, and while the glaze is still wet, the tissue paper is flipped over and basically rubbed in or fired into the glaze, and that tissue paper is basically burnt away, and that's how we get the pattern.
But it was hand painted on the tissue paper.
It was hand painted on the tissue paper. However, the haze pattern, hand painted every piece. Yeah, so you can imagine it was terribly expensive. It was actually available to the public if you had the money. Some of the pieces that we have are from a collection that a 19th century lawyer, I believe, bought his daughter on her wedding. So we have Whitehouse, and then we have bourgeois.
So the Harrison one, is that stamped, or how is that one made?
That's going to be a transfer print, tissue paper placed onto the.
So it's still hand painted.
It's still hand painted, but it's transferred over.
See how beautiful that is. This is the dessert plate with the dark green, dark blue in the background, which is one of my favorite pieces.
And later on, they developed basically the method of stamping, like you would see today on what we have for transfer prints.
And that would have occurred 1900?
That's going. Let me go to my archaeology brain. So decals came about 1880s. Transfer print was occurring well into as early as like 1780, 1790. But and well, the French. Okay, so
We don't know. Come
We
to the
don't
museum
know.
and we'll look it up for you.
It's very difficult to tell the difference between transfer and decal. But hand painted, you can see the brush strokes. But when it's hand painted on tissue paper and transferred, those brush strokes go away, and that is way too much more information than you needed to know about transfer.
I'll need some information.
So we're still looking at French stuff. This was actually English ordered. This is Wedgwood. This was a market-ready pattern that Theodore Roosevelt ordered. He didn't want to spend a lot of money on fancy stuff, but we want to bring attention to the seal.
So, what you see here, you see something different, but the head of the eagle here is pointing to the olive branches on that piece, but on this piece, it's pointed to the arrows. So there's several things about this that's kind of odd.
So let me speak to that.
Okay, and one more thing too is his wife did not like all the fancy stuff added to all the china. She didn't like the Hayes china or Mrs. Harrison's, goldenrod wheat corn thing. So they wanted to do something much more what she called presidential.
Very simple, very high style at the time. A lot of gold, not fancy.
Gilded Age.
Essentially, right, Sam, the Gilded Age.
Right.
But the reason I think that we have two different seals is that Theodore Roosevelt, as well as Harrison, was ordered frequently by later presidents. So there might be a disconnect in the pattern, because we know Roosevelt actually ordered. I'm flipping back and forth. Roosevelt actually ordered more Harrison, and we can tell that by the patterns, by the back marks of the china. So that's an interesting thing. And then we'll see Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was, of course, World War I, and we have
All right, let's see. Probably see it better here. See the head of the eagle. There's the beak.
And
Here's
here's
the arrows.
So we are in a declarative war, and he made a point to have that eagle face the arrows to show strength.
And this is Linux China. This is actually American China.
Sorry, what?
I say we don't have Cleveland or McKinley. They didn't.
So Cleveland and McKinley did not have patterns. They used the former presidents. They used their allocated money for other things.
And did
particularly,
Taft do the same thing?
yes.
So if he's not up here, they didn't order China.
Well, the early presidents, we have. There's some of the later presidents we don't have, and they did order them. But the early presidents, they would buy pieces at random, or they would, when they set the table, they'd use one set of china from one president and another small table with another president. And they were just trying to save money, because still you had to go to Congress to get money to buy your stuff for the White House.
Particularly Cleveland. Cleveland really liked furniture. He liked desks, so he bought desks.
Well, he got married while he was there too, so that, and he missed one in the middle.
What's up?
So the eagle, is that gold?
Yes, it's all gold. It's all gold, and it was eaten off of. But I'm gonna scurry on.
Yeah,
So
we're
Woodrow Wilson,
running over our time.
we're at war.
Yes.
Roosevelt, we're still at war.
Yeah.
So we have the eagle facing.
There's the eagle, there are the arrows, there's the
Arrows.
head. Yep, and again, we're at war
We
again.
do have the addition of a Roosevelt personal touch, which is his the rose and the leaves were part of the Roosevelt crest. Truman, the dining room was redone. Yes.
Looking at the time frame, the 1800s through the 1910 era, the fancy stuff was a lot of it was French from the Limoges area.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, then when we went to the World Wars, Limoges was destroyed. So where do we go to England?
This is Linux. This is American China.
So Woodrow Wilson was made also, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
He also made a point to order American China. Good point.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Good
I
observation.
wanted to stress that. Okay. Yeah,
Truman,
you're at the dining room.
yeah, Truman, so you know the White House got an overhaul during Truman's administration because his daughter was playing piano and the piano fell through the floor. And we can't have a White House with that kind of structure.
I mean, you've got bathrooms by that time, electricity by that time. So
when he ordered his china, he wanted it to match the new dining room colors, which were this very kind of faded green. The dining room is not that color anymore. But you still see Truman being used throughout different dinners in the later 20th century.
And during Truman's administration, the White House seal, the presidential seal, was standardized.
You see
And no more head going back and forth at the whim of the president. So it's now always going to be facing the olive
Always going to
branches,
face the olive branches.
and not the arrows.
So Truman set it straight. So Dwight Eisenhower, he didn't really want any China because, I'm going to flip really quickly, because look at all this beautiful gold China behind him. So he wanted to introduce the service plate. And the service plate goes at the place setting, and it stays at the place setting throughout the entire dinner. Your different plates come and go, but that service plate stays put. And right smack in the center is the presidential seal. And what I like to point out is this is very, very similar to the Madison pattern, which I just think is very interesting. It's a little callback to
I think
early
it's called a
federalism.
medallion pattern or something like that. All right, so Mrs. Johnson, Lady Bird Johnson, we know her as an environmentalist. Because of her, we don't have billboards on the interstate. Because of her, we have those beautiful flowers in the median strip. She loved flowers. All her dessert plates is a state flower. She did all kinds of beautiful things with the china. But look at the seal.
Yeah, now we're back to
again, she wanted something different, and so now we're back to the Madison or Napoleonic eagle. Not a bald eagle anymore. Still got the arrows on the olive branches correctly, but you know she wanted to do something different, and she did.
Despite Truman.
Yeah, despite Truman, because she and you know they put their cigarettes out in the nut trays. All right, so Carter, he was one of the presidents that actually never got to use the China, because by the time they ordered it and it came, he was out of office, just a one-term president. From the stories I've read, he tried to copy the green that was on the Truman China to copy this, the color of the dining room. It's a little bit different than that. He wanted the place to go with that. Ronald Reagan, one of Herb's favorite presidents, he was good friends with Reagan. We all know Nancy Reagan like red. Something I forgot to say. During the Johnson administration, the Whitehouse Historical Society was formed. They took over the job of providing money for the White House. So now, the china, the furniture, everything else, you submitted what you wanted to the White House Historical Society, and they paid for it if they wanted to. Or they told you this was too expensive, we won't buy that. Just to give an idea, for a place setting of 150 of the Ronald Reagan china in this time period was $390,000. So this is real gold.
2 sets.
Yeah. And they did get a blue everyday set, which you can see when you come to the museum.
But what you saw at state dinners was her signature red.
Yeah.
And this will kind of wrap up what we have as far as the presidents. So Clinton, people either love it or they hate it. But the reason why she chose these patterns is, and I say she because we know that Hillary Clinton was the one that actually designed these rooms. And don't roll your eyes. She was celebrating the 200th anniversary of the White House. So you see these patterns, they are different moldings throughout the White House that she wanted to mimic on the rims. And what we don't have in the museum is really the center service plate, which was very similar to this, but right through here was a gigantic painted White House pattern, and all of this is basically raised porcelain on porcelain.
It's very beautiful.
It's gorgeous. You don't have to like Clinton, but you have to like this
I
pattern.
like it.
I like that.
And you have to respect it because it's in celebration of the 200th anniversary.
And completely, here it is.
Mhm.
There's the White House.
Yeah.
That's great.
And she did do something completely different.
Yeah. But
So we'll end with this.
yeah, so we'll end with some slides that show many of the place settings and how just ornate these dinners can be.
This is Johnson.
This is Johnson. This whole gold thing was, I believe,
Don't ask me.
I want to say Cleveland, but I might be lying. But there was, so if they didn't get China, they got gold. And you see a lot of Greek and Roman influence, but this is Nixon, and he's using LBJ.
Yeah, kind of interesting.
Family dinner for the Nixon family, and they're using the Wilson set. Luncheon with the Egyptian president, and they're using Harrison's.
Yeah. Yep.
So Jimmy Carter, he bought his own china, but he's using Harrison's.
It didn't come in time.
It might even be kind of a display of your political political views in solidarity. This is one of my favorites. George Sr. with the Queen using LBJ.
And people know who that is.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And that was at the time, that was her husband. And
Is that Condoleezza Rice?
Condoleezza Rice.
And again, they have this is the Johnson china.
And just a little side note. So, Lady Bird, no, it was Reagan. Nancy Reagan was adamant about never using Lady Bird's china because she thought it was so informal. But yet, Nancy Reagan had two different types of china.
Yeah.
This is another really great. This is George. This is George Jr. with Queen Elizabeth, and they are using the. This is the Clinton service plate that I was referring to, all gold.
With the Whitehouse here, can't see it.
South African dinner, Clinton using Reagan.
Yeah, kind of interesting too. It just like fit the color scheme, I guess. Doesn't really matter their political point of view.
The secretary and they figure it out. So Obama hadn't gotten his china yet during the state dinner, and so they're using George and Laura Bush's china, which again is not open to the market, but Laura and George Bush have incorporated flowers on their plates. On the background here, though, this is the Eisenhower plate, so they're using their china on top of the Eisenhower plate. And the more gold, the better it matches. Everyone's going with gold these. Okay, oh, this is Biden. Okay. I forgot about this one. So Biden is using George Bush. I don't believe Biden actually got a china.
Not if he has, we haven't seen it.
And this, I believe, is true.
Yeah, could be.
And that was our White House china collection.
Now you need to come to the museum because we haven't told you but maybe a third of what we know.
We know way too much, and we could bore you forever. But thank you for your patience, and thank you for.
Is the museum only open on Saturdays?
Yes.
It is. Right now, it's only open on Saturdays, 10 to 2. But we can do private tours. Just give us a call or send me an email, and we can figure something out. Because we're only open one day a week. That's why we offer, the opportunity for personalized and private tours.
This is in the museum. It's in the old bank.
Yes.
Yes.
The old bank, right? The old Union Bank, right there.
And if you have any questions, Sam works upstairs now on Saturdays, so he's getting very familiar with our collections.
And now he knows all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought extra newsletters, right?
We have extra newsletters right up front here.
Well, thank you guys
for
for coming
become a
and
member. It certainly has the
interested.
address and it has the email information on there. So yeah, that's what's important. Oh, look at that.
So yeah, this is George Bush. This is so gorgeous.
This was out of Herb's price range.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the bug.
And I love the bug, right? The bug.
Yeah,
It's like a callback to Lady Bird Johnson.
exactly.
And this would have been Barack Obama's.
Supposedly the blue was teal, water of Hawaii, around Hawaii. That's what I've read about that.
And he's doing a little callback to the Madison French China as well. Or she was. And these are the ones that I pulled out because we are repeating it too much. Thank you.
Oh, that was.
Now you see why I was excited?
That was
This is a great presentation. Great presentation. And it's just, and when you see the way that they're displayed in the museum, I mean, it is just beautiful. It is beautiful. So please, please don't leave without one of their newsletters so you can have the information, membership information, the email information. Maybe a group would want to get together and take a tour. Yep, and do a private tour because you would be able to see the different facilities that she spoke about earlier. That's really the benefit of the private tour is to see the different locations and not just the museum. It really is.
Not only was the China interesting, but the history that
yes,
people
that's
learned,
why I know
the things they know.
Yeah, people think it's just we want to show you the China. It's all about why the China is the way it is.
Yeah, all the
So
detail.
we just
I have one.
I have a question.
When I first started working there, Cookie said, what I'm talking about, she said, find something that you're interested in, and that can be what you're good at. And then I happened to be
Quick
talking to
question.
Kerri, who knows everything, and she started talking to me. It's like, oh, this is what I'm interested in right here.
Bob has a question
Quick
for you.
question for you all. I'm assuming because of the assassination, there's some, in the White House Oval time, Jackie did not design her own china.
They had some patterns picked out, but nothing was finalized. What we do have in the museum, though, is a plate from Air Force One that we know was on Air Force One during his
What
time.
kind of design?
Really?
Come
Oh,
up
that's
with.
neat.
Yeah.
I gotta
Actually,
get
she
over
used
there.
a lot
Gotta
of
get back.
her predecessors' china. She liked both Roosevelt and she liked Truman. No, wait a minute. Was it Truman? No.
Harrison.
Yeah, she did like Harrison too.
But she was also instrumental
Wilson,
in
that's
actually
who else she
creating the China room in the White House.
Yes, yes. She and Mrs. Eisenhower. Yep, they sure did.
Well, just a little something from us.
Thank
for
you.
guys.
Oh, my goodness.
Very, very much for this.
Thank you so much.
We're so appreciative of speakers and people that will come and share history from either an organization or there's like even when we had Warren Easy show up and talk about the trail that we know here when we live here we know about the trail but you don't know nearly as much until you hear it from somebody who eats it and breathes it. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
So cool.
Somebody's trying to say something.
Anybody wants to close up?
Did somebody else? Somebody on Zoom may have a
Gloria's
question.
trying to
Oh.
ask something.
Gloria, can you hear us?
Can she
She
type?
should be coming out of it. Yeah, see if she wants to type it on the chat.
Miss Gloria Sharp.
Yeah.
Gloria, you want to ask a question? Won't you type it on the chat?
Don't touch the china.
Oh, don't touch it.
That's Claudette. Don't touch it.
Oh, that's Claudette.
We're allowed to touch. Kerri and I bought a sample. None of this is Whitehouse china.
Yeah.
This is a thing we bought on eBay with
My favorite.
examples
Yeah, my
of it.
favorite is the one.
So we're allowed to touch
Can I
this.
ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, so if champagne doesn't come from a certain place in France, then it's not champagne, it's sparkling water or sparkling whatever.
Sparkling wine.
So if China doesn't come from China, what's the difference in the porcelain? So
It's a colloquialism, if you will. It's just kind of easier to say China than China, bone porcelain, English porcelain, Chinese export porcelain. So we call it all China.
Generic.
Yeah, generic terminology.
I'm not just specific, so thank you very much.
Sure.
Leave the pulpit.
In the late 40s, early 50s, he started reproducing Limoges china here in the U.S.
Yeah, and pushed it heavily
Yeah.
for the average household. Remember, they would come door to door and sell it.
Yeah, so
Limoges, yeah.
we got those on eBay.
I think it was eBay.
So you can
Wow.
actually get,
Yeah.
you can get sets to hang, or you can get like
Yeah.
a set to eat off of for tea.
I love anything that's
Isn't
yellow.
that fun?
It's bright yellow. And the porcelain, the raised porcelain on porcelain is just
It's breathtaking.
beautiful.